That's the key point. That's where I think a lot of people fail in real estate is they try to do everything
Right.
when in reality they're probably not using their time as wisely as they should. Where if they brought on somebody for, a few $100s a month, or even $1,000 a month that could handle all their transaction coordination, how many hours is that going to free them up a month to handle everything?
You are now listening to the Your First Steps podcast. It's great to talk about $1 million dreams, but where do we start? How do we get there? Listen up as you hear directly from real estate industry leaders on how they reach success in their fields. And most importantly, what were their first steps? Let's get this party started. Here's your host, Eli the Real Estate Guy.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of the Your First Steps podcast. And today we have a very, very special guest. He is a father, a husband, a real estate investor, and real estate agent. Today we have no other than Billy Simmons. Billy, how you doing today, man?
Doing great. How about you, Eli?
Man, I am doing fantastic. And so for the folks that may not know who you are, go ahead and kind of give a brief description or just explaining who you are to the people that may not know who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Billy Simmons. I have a real estate team here in Charleston, South Carolina. It's myself. I've got a VA who kind of handles all my admin, and then I've also got a showing assistant.
Gotcha.
And so not only am I a real estate agent, but I'm also a real estate investor. So I've got a couple Airbnbs, got a flip I'm working on right now, and then also working on actually trying to do my first wholesale deal right now. So
Oh, nice, nice, good stuff. All right, and so I'm sure I'm going to have some wholesale questions for you too, so we can kind of dig into how you found it and how you are running with that. Now, something that I found whenever I'm interviewing folks is they are introduced to real estate at an early part in their childhood, or there's something that happened and it just triggered folks to be like, okay, you know what, this is the path I'm going to pursue. So, before we get into that, first, let's start off with how did you grow up? What was it like growing up as a kid for you, and what was it like in your household?
so growing up, I mean, early years were pretty kind of I guess I'll call it normal, and my my dad and then my mom. And then when I was 8 years old, my mom got diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And then 4 years later, my mom passed away. So when I was 12 and my sister was 8. And then probably about a year and a half later, my dad remarried. So I had some step siblings. We moved away from where I had grown up all my life. My family had spent all their life in Charleston to North Carolina right before my junior year of high school. So that's kind of rough right
Yeah,
before uh, at that point in life to go up there. Went off to college. College wasn't really for me, and went back to work. I've pretty much been working. Had a job since I was 12 years old, and
mhm.
worked full time in high school. Not because I had to, because of family or anything. It was just that's what I like to do. I've always liked to work.
Nice,
I
nice.
spent like 16 years in retail grocery, and then in 2000, at the end of 2009, I was talking to my dad. He was in real estate, and he told me, "Hey, I got some stuff going on, and there's some ways that some stuff that I could do that would give me a steady income where you're not, dependent deal to deal." And so went ahead, and that made it kind of easy to make the transition. And so then I left at the end of 2009, left the grocery business and got into real estate, and have been in real estate since 2010.
Gotcha, gotcha. Good. Now you're saying your dad was in real estate. So was he a landlord, or what exactly did he do in real estate?
He was a real estate agent.
Got it, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And so he was saying that he had something to where it's not a deal to deal flow. Is it more so of his systems was just so down to where it it was more so relying on the system and not a per deal basis, or what was that thing that he was saying?
What he was doing was because this was kind of at the height of the financial crisis. So he was also doing mortgage default inspections. So
Ah,
we got
okay.
paid to do like per inspection. And so
Got it,
we
got it.
do quite a bit of those.
Mhm.
And so that kind of kept it in some ways. That was a good thing, but also because it gave me a steady income, but I didn't really learn the things that I needed to do in real estate. So I was more dependent on that income. And so then things kind of progressed. And then years later, I started doing what are called BPOs, which are like a lower form of they're not really an appraisal. It's just an opinion of a value that a real estate agent can do. And so I was doing quite a bit of those and making decent money with that. And then really started buying some leads online, and then we started getting referrals and that kind of stuff. And that's when things really started ramping up, and I was able to get into investing after that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I did not know you did all the other stuff. So with that, was it is that something that you basically got all that knowledge from your dad, or was it other people that just along the way taught you those things?
So the mortgage default inspections from my dad, I learned about the BPOs from my dad.
Mhm.
And then I started applying to different companies, and then I started becoming the preferred vendor for them. And so I was able to do a large volume. And I mean,
Okay.
sometimes it was crazy, I might
Gotcha.
do, 60 of them in a week. And so
Oh, geez.
it'd be, I mean, but it did teach me skills on how to evaluate properties. So it made
Gotcha.
me, so comp and or basically it's all it is a market analysis really. And
Right.
so,
Right.
you get really good at being able to evaluate properties, know what an appraiser is going to look at. So you kind of know what those values are going to be. And whether it's working with my clients now or as an investor, it really helps me to know what my ARV is or what those kind of things. Or if I'm needing to challenge an appraisal, I
Mhm.
know exactly what the appraisers look for. So I'm able to use that data and say, okay, I know what this appraiser is putting the most weight on. So let me figure out how I'm going to get the
So
number to where it needs to be.
this is powerful stuff. So this is something that um as we're flipping properties, we have an idea for some things that an appraiser will look at. So looking at past appraisals, we'll look at that. We'll see, okay, well, because we have tile floors versus vinyl floors, and okay, we see what that valuation is. Because we have a fireplace, we see how that increases the value. But what are some things that going into a home, like, okay, for sure, these are a few things that people may overlook and they feel like it's not a good deal or a big deal because they're trying to save money? Like what are a few things that you're like, oh, do this in every flip because it's a huge bang for your buck?
I mean, one that I think people can is if you can add an extra full bath, that's always huge. That's going to
Okay.
add a lot of money.
Mhm.
Another one where I think some people think they're doing the right thing, but it can end up biting them is converting garages because they think, oh, that extra square footage will help me. But at the same time, that extra square footage may not be as much value as what a garage is in that neighborhood. So you may want to
Gotcha.
look and see about a garage. I mean, a garage can add, I've seen them, ten to $20,000 on a garage,
Wow.
that
Okay.
that can have an effect. I mean, I've actually the flip I'm working on right now. We had some miscommunication, me and the contractor, but we're going to end up keeping the garage because we were thinking about turning it into an Airbnb. Now I'm just going to flip it. But that garage is definitely going to be valuable to have there. Now we were
Gotcha.
able to add a full bath, so that's going to be helpful.
Gotcha.
Um, the biggest things is just making sure. So if you're in a suburban area, you need to be within half a mile. Try to be in the same neighborhood. And another one that I like to use also is just plus or minus 20% of gross living area. So your square footage, plus or minus 20%. And that's
Gotcha.
usually a pretty good, between 15 and 20 is a good number
15 and 20% of living area for, I guess, what do you mean by that?
for your comps
Okay, okay,
when you're
gotcha,
looking
gotcha,
at your
gotcha.
comps. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Now, something that you said earlier, and I know this is a huge debate amongst, especially now with there being like the gig economy and a lot more uprising of like entrepreneurship. There is the debate of how important is college, right? And people would say, okay, well, you need college in order to be successful. Some other folks is like college is a complete waste of time. And so I know you're saying that college wasn't for you. So what is your take on the idea of college? If somebody wants to be a real estate agent or just in general, what are your thoughts on somebody going to college?
I'd say it really depends on what you're looking to do. And and also how you're going to use that. I mean, my sister, she went to college. She's got a double major in psychology, and I can't remember the other one, and she's an appraiser now.
Right, right.
So, um, if you're going to be in real estate, I'm not somebody that completely dismisses higher education. I don't think that. But one thing that I think if you use college kind of to help build your network, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Gotcha.
That it's not just about the education you're going to get, and kind of go into it looking more of how it's going to affect your thinking than, don't. Now, if you're going into a specialized field, that's a whole different thing,
Right.
where
Right.
you're gonna really need that education. But I just don't know how many people it really college, especially in what I do, I don't know that college is really that necessary.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha. Understood. And so, and I know you touched on how your dad introduced you to real estate. Now, there's times to where parents may introduce someone or their kid to a certain industry, and they're like, you know what, this isn't really for me. I'm going to go on a different route or a different path. What about real estate made you stick to it?
I think it was the freedom, and I mean just and also I mean the freedom, being able to help others. I mean, I've always kind of been in a service related industry, being in retail, that kind of stuff. I love helping people.
Mhm.
But I mean, also, I mean, financially, it can really, there's not a lot of jobs where you can make the kind of money that you can make in real estate,
Right.
especially not having a college degree. I mean,
Gotcha.
it's just, yeah, there's not I mean, financially, I don't think, I never would have imagined, I don't know that if I was in another job that I would be able to be in the financial position I'm in now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, one of the well, before I get into that question, what are some challenges as you came into it? And though your dad helped you understand like certain aspects of real estate, what are some challenges that you didn't know were coming, but you had to overcome as you became a real estate agent?
I'd say the biggest one was lead generation and systems, knowing what to, kind of the systems to put in place, and knowing how important it was to, um, have a make it a business where it's not just you. If it's like I said, I've got my assistant, and I mean, he does a lot for me, and it frees me up to do a lot of things that I'm a lot better at. Um, that's the key point. And that's where I think a lot of people fail in real estate, is they try to do everything
Right.
when in reality they're probably not using their time as wisely as they should. Where if they brought on somebody for, a few $100s a month, or even $1,000 a month that could handle all their transaction coordination, how many hours is that going to free them up a month to handle everything?
Gotcha.
Also, what that does is that prevents things from falling through the cracks. Um, like with a showing assistant, I and I hear a lot of things about people. They're like, oh, I don't want to pawn somebody off on a showing assistant. I don't want to pawn somebody off on a transaction coordinator. That's not what you're doing. You're making sure that they're getting the highest level of service by doing that. And that's one of the things that I explain to people when it comes to, like, with my showing assistant. I say, listen, I've got a showing assistant, and the reason and what it's going to do is it's going to make it to where you can look at houses on your schedule, not where you're dependent on what my schedule is. So this is
Gotcha.
another set of hands, but I'm the person that's always going to be the one negotiating everything in a transaction.
I love it. I love it. And so, okay, it's interesting that you say that. I was actually listening to a podcast today, and they approached it from a more religious standpoint, but their whole thing was, if you are doing everything yourself, then you're basically blocking yourself from utilizing the gifts that God gave you to the maximum ability.
Absolutely.
And you're also blocking somebody else from being able to use their gifts to help you achieve your goal, which is to help people in whatever your business is. And when he said that, it was interesting because I know I'm super guilty of this. I feel like I can do everything myself, and it always gets to a point to where it's like, man, if I could just have somebody do this, or I could have somebody do that. So, what was that point to where it's like, okay, I'm at a breaking point here, or I'm at a point to where it's like, right now, if I add on any more business, it's gonna lower the service that I'm giving. So what was that point for you to where it's like, all right, I need my first hire, or did you already have in your mind that a hire needs to happen immediately?
So we had already tried a transaction coordinator before, didn't work super well. But then when I got a coach, it he kind of helped see where the gaps were and kind of fill in what are you good at, what aren't you good at. And that's what really helped me was once I got the coach, kind of helped me see, okay, now I need to do this. And it's, and I'll talk to people and tell them about my assistant. And I'm like, I tell them how much it is. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money to be putting on well, if you look at it as an expense, yeah, it's a good bit of money. But then when I look at it as an investment, he actually, I actually end up saving money every month if I was to hire a transaction coordinator. And he does
Mm,
so much more than just that.
right.
Um, and one of the things we're actually even thinking about doing right now is even starting a transaction coordination company where,
Ah,
when things are a little slower for me, I can, you know, hire him out and, he gets a portion of the money. And then that way we still, everybody's still being productive, but we're utilizing things and we might even be able to, expand things out further from that.
gotcha. And so he's your assistant that does transaction coordination amongst other things as
Correct.
well.
Yeah.
So your first hire was an assistant
Yeah.
for that. Gotcha. All right. Now, I think it's very important to get coaching whenever you're at any type of business or whatever it is. Even when it comes to school, I look at schooling sometimes as coaching in itself, depending on what you're going to school for. But that's a mental thing I had to overcome. I think it was like 2018 to where I'm like, you know what? I'm actually gonna pay for mentorship. And I'm actually going to pay to actually learn how to do this next step. And I remember at that point, I started making attempts to wholesale in like 2016, and I was getting non-refundable deposits. I wasn't really getting any like deals done until I decided, like, okay, you know what? Let me actually pay somebody who knows what they're doing and have them teach me the way on how to get a deal. And so I paid for that mentorship, and along with paying her and just speaking with Whitney, my wife, for you guys listening, and just kind of understanding, okay, where are my gaps? Like how you're saying with your coach, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And what I found was a large part of it, besides some technical aspects, a lot of it was mindset. And so I was spinning my wheels to the point to where it's like I was feeling good about doing activity, but when it came to the results, it's a well, you're kind of halfway doing a lot of things instead of fully doing a few things. And
Yeah.
once I made that shift, I literally a month and a half after I got the coach, I got the first deal. And it took me 2 years of trying myself, but a month and a half of actually paid mentorship, and I got it. So I guess what was that point to where you're like, all right, I need a coach because what I'm doing may not necessarily be working, or I need to speed this up. So what was that decision for you?
I'd say it was just to a point where I was working a lot and didn't know how, but I still wasn't happy with what I was making, but I felt like there was no way that I could do any more. So I didn't know what it was going to be that would
Mm,
get me to that next step. So I needed to figure out how to actually, and it was just constantly, I mean, nonstop working, super stressed out, and, all of those things. And you, that's where it kind of got to the point where I was just miserable. I was making decent money, but then once I got the coach, my income definitely increased by
mm,
doing that and getting those people in place to help. And
gotcha.
then, and that's when he also suggested, okay, now you got this, now you need to get a showing assistant. And that showing assistant can then turn into a buyer's agent, or they can just stay as showing assistant.
Mm,
Um, One of the things that I have found is a lot of times when you do that, as somebody that wants to go into a buyer's agent role, they kind of start to, I don't know if calling it not appreciated it's the right thing, but I mean, when you're giving somebody pre-qualified lead, pre-approved leads,
Right.
I don't think people understand how valuable that is. And
Right.
now I've got a showing assistant. That's really all she needs to do is just go show houses. And that frees up a lot of my time. And I mean,
Gotcha.
that first summer when I'm sitting there, I'm out at the beach with my family and then negotiating a contract as we're coming back
Mhm.
because, I've got people out showing houses that made me realize, oh, okay, this is a lot more valuable use of my time by having somebody out showing houses.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I love it. And so there's some of the things that I remember when we were doing our accountability call. And for you guys listening, we used to have a accountability call. It was called a treadmill talk. We used to do that. At one point, it was every morning, Monday through Friday, pretty early in the morning. And it was called treadmill talk because a lot of us would be working out while we were talking about our goals and different things that we wanted to accomplish. And I remember when you got your coach, there were a lot of systems that you implemented. And what I want to talk about is some of the marketing that you do in order to acquire some of your clients. So, what was your marketing looking like before the coach and then after you got the coach? Like, what are some shifts that you made immediately?
I mean, there was not really any marketing going on because that
Mhm.
was just basically referral based. So then but then what I was able to do with the coach was, there was a system in place not only for every time we sold a house or listed a house, we had a marketing system that went out with that, but then also a systemized um, way to keep in touch with my sphere of influence. So all of the people in my contacts, so that every quarter you're constantly talking to those people so they're not forgetting about you. And
Gotcha.
then what we've expanded that out to now is now doing client events as well. So twice
Mhm.
a year we do a client event where we invite everybody. And so that's a huge thing. And where I'm able to do it in my neighborhood, at my neighbor, the uh, like our amenity center in our neighborhood. I'll bring in
Mhm.
a bounce house. A couple of my neighbors, they cook pizza. They've got their own little pizza ovens and they like to cook pizzas. So I hired them to make pizzas.
Nice.
And so it's a really good time and it gets everybody together. And also it lets me invite the community. And so just kind of staying out there.
Gotcha. And so I was watching a podcast the other day, and it was of Myron and Golden. Are you familiar with Myron Golden?
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's big on he teaches businesses how to scale with selling digital products and other things that they would sell, like service
Yeah,
or product based businesses. And something that he was explaining was when it comes to lead generation, he broke it down to a lead is basically somebody that's willing to lean in and hear what you have to sell. And then a conversion basically happens, or a customer, I forgot the exact words, but it's like someone who was a person that was willing to listen and then who then bought something. And then he had some other levels, but one of them, the last one was customer retention. And that was a subscription based model to where it's a reoccurring revenue. But when I hear about you saying the touches staying top of mind to different individuals having get together customer events, it makes me think about, is that a form of retention to where it's a yes, there's the way of sending emails, yes I can call, yes I can text, I can send mailers, but having this event is just a cycle of a snowball of staying on top of mind. Is that kind of like how you look at it, to where it's like marketing is more so of like, let me just keep tapping you so that you can remember I'm here type of thing?
absolutely. And I mean,
Mhm.
even I guess might even been Christmas Eve. I got a text from somebody that's been on a MLS trip, and that lead first came in March of 2021.
Oh, wow.
And so
Mhm.
actually here, I'm going to need to finish this up here shortly, but
Yeah.
because I got to go show them a house because they
Gotcha.
reached out and they were like, hey, we're ready to go start our search again and uh,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
start looking at houses again.
All right. So for individuals that want to get started in being a real estate agent, what would you recommend for them to do?
I'd
What's
say
their
the
first
first
step?
step,
Mhm.
if you're getting involved to start with is I would highly recommend joining a
Gotcha.
high performing team. And that way that is one that really focuses on education and training. And then that way you can kind of build from there.
Gotcha.
But that's where I would highly recommend you start is
Gotcha.
start with a team.
Cool. And so there's two sets of groups of folks. Whenever I interview them on a podcast, there's some folks that are not necessarily anti-book, but they're saying books aren't necessary. Just go out there and learn, and you'll or get coaching or mentorship or whatever, and that's all you need. Whereas some other folks, they're like, on top of mentorship, also load yourself up with books because it gives you the most amount of knowledge. And then there's those in between. So where do you fall in the category of books? How important are books to you when it comes
I,
to learning?
I think books are important, but one thing that I think is people can go kind of from book to book to book and never actually implement anything. And so one thing I've kind of shifted to is I've got books that I kind of read the same thing every year, and then on occasion I'll add some books. The one book that I would say was the one that really kind of kicked everything off for me,
Mhm,
and that was, and I got this recommendation from a guy named Ricky Caruth who does a free real estate coaching online,
mhm,
and it was The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, and that
mm,
was the book that kind of really helped with my mindset shift, and then and went from there. That's what I would say. But no, books I think are very important. It's a great way to get knowledge at a pretty cheap, at a pretty low cost.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Good deal. All right. Now, and this is the segment where we do a lightning round. So I ask three random questions and answer them to the best of your ability. And sometimes they get a little fun depending on how you answer them. So here's the first question: if you were to interview someone that was alive within the last 200 years, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. Um, I- I'd say his name's Václav Havel, and he ended up
Mm,
becoming the president of Czechoslovakia after the fall of communism. And it was
mm,
kind of an interesting story how he came to power and everything. And I've always had a huge respect for him. And it's pretty funny because one of the things that kind of prompted that government to fall, he wrote plays, but one of the things that prompted that government to fall was a cover band that played rock and roll. That they covered music of the Velvet Underground, and they ended up getting put in prison. And that was one of the things that kind of helped spark that revolution. And
really?
so, yeah, and
Okay.
so you had a guy in
Interesting.
America that sang about heroin and transvestites, and it ended up prompting uh, that. And I mean, especially with my wife being from Moldova over in Eastern Europe, so she grew up under communism too. That's definitely something I'd say.
Gotcha. All right. So number two, if you were to invest in any state outside of the Carolinas, which state would it be? And what I mean invest is invest in a real estate property.
There's a guy I started following on Twitter, and he's doing a lot of investment in Oklahoma. And so I
Mhm,
was pretty impressed with the prices he was paying and the return. So I was like,
mhm.
that might not be a bad place. So I'd say Oklahoma.
Gotcha. All right. And the last question: if you were to be any animal, which animal would it be, and why? And not a lion.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of animal I'd like to be. I guess a tiger maybe, because you're kind of up there at the top of the food chain, so you're not really
Gotcha.
having to worry about anybody coming after you. And I'm a
Gotcha.
Clemson fan, so the Tigers there
There
too.
you
So
go. Awesome. Awesome. Good deal. Now, words of wisdom for anyone that's interested in being a real estate agent.
I'd say the main thing is just to get started and just don't don't let anything get in your way and kind of soak up all the information you can. Listen to podcasts, read books. Um, I'd even encourage you to find agents that you want to perform, that are doing the kind of volume you want to do. Reach out to them and talk to them, and you'd be surprised how many of them are more than happy to help you and give advice.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I love it. All right. And for the folks that want to follow you and get in contact with you, and just really talk to you about your services and your knowledge, where can they get a hold of you?
You can either reach out to me on Facebook, so Billy Simmons on Facebook, and then also on Instagram, it's at Billy Simmons RE. So
Gotcha.
for real estate.
Gotcha. Good deal. All right. Awesome. Hey, Billy, thank you so much, man. Greatly appreciate you doing this episode with us.
All right. Thanks, Eli. I really
All right. Thank you.
appreciate it.
All righty. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Your First Steps podcast. Let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a review. And don't forget to subscribe.